Hey, Kitty.
Hey, Kittie.
What's up, Kitty? Yo, Kitty.
Talk to him, Kitty.
Hey, baby.
I'm your host, Kittie Rose, and we have a beautiful guest with us today. Her name is Yansy of Chasing Yansy, and she is a dating and relationship coach. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you
hey,
so
baby.
much. That was so nice.
Because you deserve it.
Thank you, girl. I appreciate it.
I love watching you on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
So to give everyone some context, me and Yansy met about, oh my God, has it been almost 2 years ago?
I feel like it's going to be 2 years. That's insane.
It's been almost 2
I feel
years.
like those old people, it's been so long.
Relationship 101.
Wow.
We had a chance to meet each other. I think we spoke about this briefly. Was your take like everyone else's of me, like, kind of like, who is this girl?
I was gonna say, who is this girl? What is her energy? Because we were all spazzing. We were all like on college, first year college vibes, and you were just like in your zone.
Always.
Yeah. I will say it was a most pleasant surprise. It's like the opposite when you think someone's gonna be amazing and then they end up being.
Yep.
I'd rather be the other way around. Like I couldn't figure you out, and then you're awesome.
And you know what? Because I remember it was a couple people that said that they thought I was just like this mean person who just was stuck up, and I'm like, I just don't know y'all.
Yes.
And I like to be in my element until I warm up with you all. Before then, no. And then we had a chance to speak. And you're like, oh.
You're a whole personality.
Yeah.
And you said you had been going through some stuff. So you had a lot in your mind and your head was miles away. But yeah, it's funny. I think we clicked the most out of everybody, which is ironic. Like you just can't judge a book by its cover.
I think, were you sitting beside me? Oh, you were sitting across from me. We went out to eat.
Yes.
You were sitting
and we were communicating with our eyes a lot.
That's what it was. I was definitely uncomfortable at the table. In case people didn't know, I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it had nothing to do with me being shy or nervous or anything. I didn't like some of the conversations I was hearing.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And the food took forever to come out. So
it was not good.
Yeah, that was special.
So you are a dating coach and a relationship coach.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you get into this profession?
All right. Well, it's a crazy story. I was the classic person who, wanted to get married, raised in a Christian church. And so if you're like 18, 19, 20, not married, you feel like you're an old maid. So I was just chomping at the bit, hopeless romantic, and rushed into a situation. Looking back, there were plenty of signs that we were not compatible. He actually would have been the strong one to walk away, but I was that, I can't go back on an engagement. How embarrassing, push through. 12 years later, I was like, this is not working.
Yeah.
And so I had this fantasy that, I just picked the wrong person. And if I pick the right person, it is going to be amazing. It's going to be an actual rom-com.
Right.
Like, there's going to be a man under my window with the boom, the boom, the boom box.
The boom box.
I was thinking boom, the mic, boom box. And it was not that. Like, it was so confusing. And I, like so many women, I thought I get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I had the look. And so I would get a ton of attention, but nothing would stick. And I thought it would be straightforward. I'm attracted to you. You're attracted to me. Let's get to know each other. Let's do this. Boom.
Right.
And it was not that way. And so I went out on a journey to just understand men. And so I didn't want folks in my business. So I used my first name because my family knows me by my middle name. And I used my first name and I made a new profile. And I was like, I'm going to ask whatever I want to ask. And interestingly enough, men were honest, even if it put them in a bad light.
Okay.
And I think it was like a wanting to save the damsel in distress or be the hero. And so what I found out, I asked later, why were you interested in this? I'm just some random suburban mom. But the men wanted to answer my questions. The other men stuck around because they wanted to see if their answers matched the other guys. Like, it's my belief, the common belief. And then of course the women were with popcorn. Like, we want all the tea,
all the information.
So I'm collecting data, and everyone's like waiting for this launch date. And I'm like, for what? I need it. I'm going on dates. I remember my very first live stream was after a date. I couldn't wait to get home. And the guy told me he wanted a commitment after the first date. And he challenged me and was like, you're just living in fear if you don't want to commit. And I was like, but I think we're supposed to date first. And I was so new to it. I was questioning myself. So that was my first live stream, was this debate. Is this romantic or creepy?
Yeah.
And it was like an 80-20 split. And then I was getting off. I'm pissed. I'm shaking. I'm so upset. And I get off the thing and they're like, when's the next one? I'm like, this is my life. Like, I'm not doing this. So fast forward, I had a couple professionals reach out to me a couple years later and they were like, ma'am, you're sitting on a gift. You literally need to do this professionally. And I was kicking and screaming because I'm very private. I was on a private Facebook page. It was unmarked. You couldn't even find it. It was like secret page. I just value my privacy. And now here I am on every single platform talking to you.
But you know what? That's good though. So in that process, when you were becoming who you were growing into this
I was
profession.
chasing Yansy. That's literally where the name came from.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now that I know where
everyone
the name
thinks
is coming
they're chasing
from.
me, and I'm like, no, I'm chasing the highest version of myself in Christ. But
I love that.
Thank you.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, I need to explain that because everyone assumes it's something else. I'm like, no.
I think that's dope.
Thank you.
I never knew the backstory. I was like everybody else.
See, now we're learning.
Chasing Yansy. Okay. Because I mean, you're beautiful. So I mean, I would have thought that, okay, people are chasing you.
I appreciate that.
You know, it's nothing wrong with that.
I'm chasing Yansy. Y'all can get this knowledge if you want to come along the journey.
So in growing into this profession, tell me some of the things that you have noticed amongst people who are dating that probably sets them up for failure.
Oh, I would say the biggest thing, I'm going to go with women at first. I think we spend so much time fantasizing about our dream guy. We don't spend enough time wondering what men fantasize about. So we go in there with this massive checklist. I'm going to rule him out. I'm going to vet. But then once we decide he's the right guy for us, we've done nothing to make him be motivated or incentivized to commit to us. It's like, I'm here, I'm pretty, I have a snatched waist. What's the problem? And we don't understand what they need. And there's this message of, you know, men just want sex, men just need a good meal. And while those things are true, there's a little bit, they do have some emotional intelligence.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because I think, because, you know, society has this idea of like the perfect partner, right? That's just what we go by. So society has an idea of the perfect partner. And because we have a lot of conversations and we see a lot of videos, there's more spaces for women to talk about what the ideal man, the ideal partner is. But where are the models when it comes to an ideal woman, an ideal wife for men? We don't see that as often. Even like in the portrayals of Disney and stuff like that, we saw Prince Charming.
Yeah.
That's what we saw. We saw Prince Charming. He usually had something going, probably was coming from a strong family or a family of money. And then the girl sometimes was the damsel in distress.
Usually.
Or in poverty or something like that. She was pretty, but that was all that you saw, was she was pretty. There were no real other characteristics.
And it wasn't her personality. He just saw her and he just knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially in most of the digital world that we're in right now, most of these social spaces, there's still not enough. We see women who are having conversations, but what do men have to look forward to?
Yeah.
Because you hear horror stories for men. So what do they have to look forward to? As soon as you open up a social media app, Instagram, TikTok, anything like that, if we see a woman who's bitter and she's projecting and she's bashing men, is that what a man has to look forward to? When we're constantly seeing the reels and the shorts and the clips and the stitches and stuff like that of women bashing men, where are the women who are highlighted? What are the examples that men can say we look forward to?
Yeah.
Because, and I'm a firm believer in this. I do believe that both people can benefit in being in a very healthy relationship. I absolutely believe that. But I do believe that it is a huge sacrifice for men to be in that relationship, considering what all they have to take in. Yeah. Right. We don't have to. We don't have to come. I can't tell you how many times I look behind my back because I don't have to. My husband does it, right? I can't remember when I opened the door for myself. It's a lot of things that I can't even remember because he does it. But that means while we're worrying about other factors, and you know, we have a lot of responsibilities as well, but coming in, laying your life down for a woman, she's expecting me to protect her. Yeah. I have to protect her. Yeah. She's expecting me to provide. I have to provide.
And that comes in from day one.
Yeah.
Like before even the proposal, he's immediately changing his lifestyle from the first time he asks you out.
Exactly. I have to, as a man, we're not talking about the passive men who don't have things going for themselves. We're talking about men who are walking in direction, purpose. I have to create security for me and this woman.
Right.
So it's more than me now. I can't be selfish. I have to make sure that she's secure, she's happy, I'm being consistent. It's so many layers.
I never thought about how much they have to be on. I'm sure you've seen that trend where the girl is like, they're doing what's in her mind and she's like, da, da, da. And the guy is like, the perimeter, this guy looks shady. Da, 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 you know? And I never thought about it, but they're always having to be on. And even from a provider standpoint, I remember calling my ex-husband almost in tears. And I'm like, oh my God, I never expressed the depth of gratitude because I think sometimes you can't appreciate on a level until you've experienced it. So I was always grateful for his financial support, you know, while we were married. But when I became on my own, yes, he did support. But of course, if anyone knows, support does not cover your living expenses 100%. When I finally felt that burden for the first time, because I was a daddy's girl who was not spoiled, but well taken care of, immediately went into my husband's home. I never had to lay awake at night wondering how we're going to cover this or what. And it was a luxury. And so even something like that, it weighs you down. It takes a little bit away from your ability to just relax and enjoy yourself. So I always thought of it like, oh, they're clocked out, so they should be relaxing. No, your mind is constantly thinking about the numbers and how much is in the bank account. So I think there are, to your point, a lot of things that guys do that they don't really get celebrated for or really even acknowledged for because we've never had to do it. Even the asking out. Like if women had to go through just an exercise of how awkward that is to go up to a person knowing you could get rejected, you know, I tell a story about that when I had to do an exercise and it wasn't for that, but it was an aha moment where I went, this is awkward. Yeah. This is a really awkward situation. So there's
women don't, for one, there's so many high unrealistic expectations now from women. There are so many, and I'm a woman, and when I listen to some of the women, I'm like, there's no way that you all can possibly think like this and think that this is okay, right? But of course, you know, when you give rebuttal or something like that, you call it a pick me. You know, that's the term for people who simply advocate for healthy relationships.
Shallow,
or you're shallow.
If you expect the guy to use his eyeballs and see what you look like.
Exactly, but it's like for us, it's a lot easier for us to go out, make ourselves up, go talk to a man and be accepted, right? His first appetite is visuals right there in front of us. It's like, okay, yeah, you look good. Yeah, I have a conversation. That's not the same for men. So it's nerve-wracking. And I don't think people really understand that. But I always talk, whenever I talk to women, I'm like, have you actually been around men and had conversations with them and watched them outside of the bad experiences that you had? That's not easy. I'm sure they're sitting right there like, how do I go and approach her? Okay, what's going to happen? If I get rejected, how's this rejection going to be? 'Cause, you know, some women want to give loud rejections and some of them are polite and like,
or post them on social media.
Yes, especially now.
That requires that person to go outside of themselves. Though, You're asking somebody to step outside of their world and what they're focusing on, their goals, and actually empathize and put themselves in someone else's shoes. I don't think that happens a lot.
Empathize, exactly. It's a lot of lack of empathy.
Because I think if we did that, so many other situations would get resolved in a relationship. And I admit this, I'm a reformed, self-centered person. I always thought of a selfish person as somebody who had ill intentions. You know, I just want it all. Mine was like a horse blinders. I was so uber focused on what I wanted. There were many times I neglected to see what my husband needed. And I didn't have a deep empathy for things that he wanted if I didn't also want them. And that was one of the things that I said, when I'm single, I want to really work on myself and become the best version of myself to give. If the Lord blesses me to have another partner and get a second chance, I want to be that. And that is something that I'm the most proud of now, is that from my waking moment to the time I go to bed, I'm constantly going, what can I do to make his day better? Good. How can I anticipate his needs before he gets to them? And before somebody freaks out and goes, oh my God, it's like servitude. That's why you pick someone who thinks the same way. And it balances out. But the old me versus this me, oh my God. Night and day.
Once you have a balanced relationship, you have that congruency that you've been looking for. It's a pleasurable experience. So you want to do it, right? You want to, it's like, you know, this makes me feel good to make you feel good. It's so much more than just making the other person feel good. It's like, I really enjoy, I take pleasure in doing these things for you. Not thinking that, it's going to come back and return, just knowing how happy it makes you. But that's when you're really in sync.
You're so full of love that it's spilling over.
Exactly.
And you can't help but give. And this is what hurts me when I see comments. I just want to take some women and just hold them, because the comments, you know, they say, who hurt you? It screams, who hurt you? Because if I even dare to express this, you know, have you looked at it from a man's perspective? Well, do you know what we have to go through? There's so much hurt that has happened with women that they're not even past their stuff they don't even have space to empathize with the guy. So I think a lot of people who are dating need to actually spend time in therapy first. And most of my clients are usually coming out of therapy or still going through therapy.
Which is good.
Before they talk to me or while they're talking to me.
Which is good.
So there's work that needs needs to be
So
done.
I run a lot of classes because I want to get back to you talking about empathizing. I run a lot of classes on emotional intelligence because we know I specialize in dialectical behavior. So emotional intelligence is a factor of dialectical behavior because it focuses on relationship management, conflict management, interpersonal skills.
Okay.
And so, and whenever we're doing the EQ tests and we get to the points where we're checking percentages to see where are you as far as your level of empathy for other people, managing your emotions, the emotions of other people, empathy, they'll score high until they have a conversation with me, until they're sitting in class. And then when we start going through empathy, they're like, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe that was wrong. Right. Because then we start talking about perspective taking and things like that. When we talk about empathy, of course, we tell people it's you being able to step into another person's shoes, but you also need to see it.
Yeah.
Just try to at least understand why they feel this way. Try to understand their experiences without refuting or correcting them, right?
That's that part right there.
Without comparing your experience to theirs.
Defending
Because,
yourself.
right, empathy and validation go hand in hand. So one of the ways that I always find that if a person truly has empathy is I ask them, how are you when a person has a difference in perspective than you? What happens when they have a difference in perspective from you? What happens when they don't agree with something that you agree with or something that you said? Then what happens? If you have a low perspective taking, it's going to be hard for you to step into another person's shoes because you're always going to try to prove how your perspective is better, how you're right. And it gives you this false sense of control to be able to do that. And women, because we need safety, emotional safety, so much more than men, we use those type of tools. The unhealthy tools, we use those, right? So I go against what you say. I refute what you say. I become defensive because it makes me feel safe and it makes me feel like I'm in control whenever I'm able to do so. And that's one of the issues that we see. But of course, when you call that stuff out, they don't want to hear it all the time. Luckily, I've been blessed to be able to have a lot of women who have come to my class. And I do mean a lot, who have come to my classes and they're like, you know what, coach? Yeah, baby, you got some work to do. But another thing is that you'll see that, of course, more women go to therapy, counseling more than men, but you'll see the reason why they run. Because maybe someone highlighted a inexcusable behavior, or maybe someone highlighted something about you that they didn't deem as desirable. Maybe they told you about yourself and you didn't want to believe it.
I had that happen to me.
Yeah.
I thought this one was going to cuss me out. She was cool with me when I got her husband. But once I got around to her, it was like, oh, you're terrible. You don't know what you're talking about.
No. And it's like, because now it's going to prove that what they said was probably right about me. And I have to face myself.
Yes.
But you need to face yourself. Hence the reason why I came up with Becoming a Better Partner. That's the reason why, because I'm like, it's not. And we have a lot of people who purchase that book, and I have to talk to them and tell them it's not always the other person's fault.
Right.
I can tell you from working with countless couples, it has never been one person.
Right.
It has never been just one person who caused the problems. Even if this person has cheated on you or lied to you or hurt you, what did you accept? What did you not see? What did you excuse? What did you constantly make excuses
people
for?
To take accountability.
We're asking them to take accountability, right? But then if you take accountability, then you have to feel the shame. You have to feel that.
Yeah.
You need it.
But it's interesting. I really spent a lot of time. I'm very introspective. Like it could be a bad thing sometimes. I'm so in my head. But I couldn't figure out why I was getting so many people who loved me in my very close circle saying I was defensive, extremely defensive. And I really thought about it. And the best way I can describe it, and the metaphor is not the best, but it's almost like if you had a stain on your shirt, if you have a healthy mindset, I could say, oh, you spilled some mustard on your shirt. And you look at it like, oh, this is fixable. And it's just a small stain. The perspective I had when I was defensive was I heard you say, you are trash, throw the whole person away.
Right.
I couldn't hear that you were only talking about this one piece of me, this one part of my personality, or this one action I took. I just heard you are terrible.
Right.
And I don't know what made that transition. I think it was having so many failed interactions and being tired of it. But it was so freeing to finally be able to go, it's okay to just receive something from someone. I'm going to receive it from you. I'm going to kind of hold it in my hand, marinate, and then decide if it's true or not. Because you can go the other extreme and then take everything to be true.
And see, that's self-management, right? That's what that truly, all in what you just said, that's self-management. When I take in this feedback, when I hear this criticism, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
most times because people have negative perceptions of themselves, they project that. And so if you think negative of yourself, you're going to think a dysfunctional or negative assumption, and you're going to project it onto that person and make them responsible for the assumption that you made.
Well.
And so when you do that, you assume this person thinks the same thing. It's like, no. Defensiveness is layered.
Yeah.
It's so layered. And many people hold that very unhealthy trait. And so sometimes, like, even when it doesn't matter who it is, when you become defensive, I'm always thinking of more than what it is. But you have to train yourself, and we'll gear back to empathy.
Yeah.
Me empathizing with people is learning to look beyond that. When I hear a projection or when I see dysregulation, I look beyond that. Because why are you feeling this way?
Right.
Why are you going through that? I can easily go back. I can counter this. I can go back and forth. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to acknowledge it. What's behind that?
Right.
And when I see sometimes when people become defensive when they project, I'll ask, did I say that?
I was going to say, or I'll say, I'll kind of do like a, because you know, if they're struggling internally, you don't want to add fuel to the fire.
Yes.
So I'll go, like in a sense of that was a different reaction to something that I said that I would expect. Is there something that I said that sounded like, or like you said, is that what you heard me say? And usually the person will be like, well, I knew that's what you meant, or you were trying to imply that. And I'm like, okay, but did I actually say it? Because I didn't. And my comeback is always, I'm the most straightforward person you're going to meet.
Yes.
I probably am a little too straightforward. I don't have a problem saying what I want to say. So I'm not going to use an innuendo. I'm not going to infer. I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
So if you're taking that, I can't control that. But I think what happens is, like you were saying, the initial reaction is, I didn't say that, and then start to counter. And now you're battling it out to see who can win that fight. But it's that position, like even how your posture is when you're at a place where you're self-regulating, it suddenly doesn't become this emotional thing. You can just let that person kind of stew and let's just work that out. I'll be here when you're.
And then another thing, I think people lack social awareness. I think that people don't know how to identify other people's emotions because they don't know how to identify theirs. And so sometimes you'll misread a person because our nonverbals speak before us. And you can look and you can misread a person.
Case in point.
Yeah, and it's like, why? And it sometimes you have to just ask when they get through it. Okay, so maybe I didn't say it. Did my body show that?
Yes.
Is that what you interpreted? Because that's not what I was thinking.
Right.
And sometimes you have to give that clarity for a person. Like sometimes you really have to pull a person out of their mind to help connect with that person.
Yeah.
You just have to have that honest conversation. I think I wish more people did that in dating spaces because in the society we're in right now, people just cut off. We are in a council.
I was just talking about that.
Oh my God, the council culture is ridiculous.
Like nobody is perfect. Someone is going to require a little bit of rubbing out those edges.
Yes. Like, what was this idealized image that you had of this person? Like, what was that? So we're in this age where it's like we're just going to cut people off, right? With this council culture, standing on business, crap, I can't stand it. It runs me insane. And it's like, well, would you like for a person to continue to do that to you?
Right. And you have no idea what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a debate all the time.
Why don't you just ask a question?
Yes.
Why don't you just communicate?
Yes.
The lack of communication is crazy.
I hate that so much where there are so many. I'm telling you, I would love to sit with a couple and just narrate almost like a football game, you know, the announcers will break it down because I will watch. I love watching reality TV. I don't like to admit it because people look down on it, but I'm obsessed with the interpersonal relationships and the communication.
Right.
And I'll see how one thing can happen. The other person takes it to mean something. And instead of talking about it, and they always talk to the camera and they say directly what they mean, right? Yeah. I can't stand that girl. I feel like she da-da-da-da. But then they get back with the person and it's innuendos, layers, talking about coffee. Like, well, how are we talking about coffee? You don't like this girl.
Yes.
And I'm like, if we would just put our big girl pants on and use words, we'd resolve so many things. And, you know, not to talk about my guy too much. He's amazing. But one of the things he said very early on was, we go together real bad. There's no breaking up. I'm like, it could be either romantic or creepy, depending on how you see your person. But he's like, we're not doing all this. And I had been traumatized in my past. I had a lot of abandonment issues because the minute there was any type of an issue, there was either hints or outright statements of I'm out or I don't know how much more I could deal. Yeah. And it was such this relief to know that we're going to stay in this ring until we work this out.
Right.
And then we're going to get over it and we're going to move on. But I think that, like you said, unrealistic expectations, people feel like if we're meant to be, we're not going to fight, we're this, we're that. And my perspective is different in the sense that there are healthy ways to fight, and there are certain boundaries that don't get crossed. But if that person is moving within respectful boundaries, I'm even okay with them getting mad.
Right.
You know, like you're allowed to blow up every now and then.
Natural.
It's natural.
It's natural.
And you want grace when it's your turn.
When it's your turn.
But I feel like there needs to be actual displayed, like people learn with videos a lot. I really think people need to see communication carried out because they didn't grow up in a home where that was demonstrated. So even you talking about it, it might sound like Charlie Brown's teacher a little bit, wah, wah, wah. Like, what does that actually look like in real time?
And I'm so glad that you said that, because the one thing that we do, especially in my practice, is we don't just talk about communication. I call you out as soon as I see it. Because I am a person who has studied human behavior for so long, I can read what's probably going on internally. I can pay attention to your body behaviors. I can pay attention to the way you fidget. I can pay attention to the little laughs that you sneak in a serious conversation. And I can see what's starting to kick in.
Lack of eye contact all of a sudden.
Like what's making you nervous right now? You appear anxious. You're trying to run internally. You're making light of this. And sometimes, like, for avoiding people, they'll laugh.
Yes.
They'll laugh. They'll come in with especially when it's serious, they'll laugh. Or people who are afraid to be vulnerable. They do the same thing sometimes as avoidance, but they'll laugh or they'll rock, they'll crack a joke, they'll look to the side, they start turning red in the face, and they're having to force themselves to sit still, and they'll look around, they'll rub their nose because they're starting to sweat. Right. And so you can read those things. It's like, okay.
It's hard to turn that off though. Sorry. As a person, not a professional, it is hard to turn that off.
Yeah. And so when I see it with my couples, even with my individuals, I'll tell them, because since a lot of these are protective measures, right? And these are psychological mechanisms that you're using. And then sometimes they're just things that you're familiar with, ways that you soothe in that moment. Because if you're anxious and you make light of it and you crack a joke or something, you're still soothing yourself because you're trying to kick in that fight or flight.
And then you trigger your partner because they think you're not taking it seriously.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'll tell them, I'll let them finish what they're saying, and I'll stop. And then we'll highlight what's going on. And we'll talk about why, so the other person can see, they can understand it, because I have to explain to you why you're doing it.
Right.
And while I'm explaining to you why you're doing it, the light bulb is going off in your partner's head like, oh, it's not intentional. No, this is a subconscious protective mechanism that they're using right now. And even in dating spaces, that's something that you see. People protect themselves subconsciously and they don't know. Right. So when they sabotage, we have to highlight why you're sabotaging. And usually there's a fear that's causing you to sabotage.
Oh, yeah. If I felt like you were possibly going to hurt me, it's like I would ramp up this almost bratty behavior. And I call it like poking a hole. But then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, see, I knew you would leave. Well, yeah, because you poked.
And so it goes two ways. It's like, because most people struggle with cognitive dissonance. I want something, but I don't act in accordance to what it is that I want. Right. And so let's talk about that situation. Let's use your example. Right. I'm afraid you're going to leave me. I think I'm protecting myself, but I'm not protecting myself. So what I'm going to do, just to get this can go two ways. I'm going to get the reassurance by creating arguments to see how connected you still are with me, right? I'm going to cause problems and do like this. Or I'm going to cause a fight. I'm going to storm out. I'm going to act an A. I'm going to walk out. And then when you're not pursuing me, you withdraw. Then I can turn it. I can victimize myself and say, I knew you were going to do this to me. It's all to protect yourself. It's just, once you actually settle in it and you sit down, and once you become regulated, you realize, I don't want to lose this person. I'm tripping, but it's hard to tell ourselves sometimes that we're tripping, right? It's hard to tell ourselves that. And then you realize that I'm setting myself up for the very thing that I'm afraid of. I'm creating it. I don't want to be abandoned, but I am pushing you away. You see a lot of people who are dating, they have fears. Their fears show up and they sabotage.
My ex-boyfriend and we had the same, we both had abandonment issues, and we were like two magnets. We were both terrified. And I wish I was excited. We would be like, are you gonna leave me? Are you gonna leave me? Like, that was our everyday conversation. Girl, he could crack open a can a certain way, be like, was that your warning? Oh, I shut the door. Are you gonna leave? And I look back and I can laugh, but we were trigger happy. Did you hear how loud he shut the door? Was that an indication? Oh my God. It was, and usually you just have one, so that person can be like, you're a nut job, calm down. You know, I say that jokingly. But when you have both people, you're like, you're on edge. And that's when I knew, I was like, you got to do work, girl. Like you need to it was a hot mess. My nervous system was like,
I shut the door. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on it. I shut the door. I shut the door. Are you girl?
Aggressively you close that chapstick like, oh my God.
Let me tell you, I'm not the person to do that with. Because if someone does that, I swear on my life, did you really trip about a door? We're over.
No,
because you tripped about the way I shut the door.
I could tell you, his kids came on the phone. We had this reoccurring thing. We'd be on the phone. It was long distance, so our time was precious on the phone. And I'm old school. Kids, you know, I feel like they're supposed to be respectful. And with my children, if they need something, they know to stand in front of me in my line of sight to where I get to a natural point in the conversation and be like, yes, what do you need? Well, he wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. He would just let them walk up and start talking. And so when I address that, meaning as a parental thing, hey, would you mind? Because it's weird. You're talking and all of a sudden they're just silent. And then you hear them talking in the background. You're like, can you give me a heads up that you weren't there anymore? So it kept happening. And then he used the excuse that he thought I didn't like his children, and they were precious. And I was like, I wasn't talking about your children. And then he riled himself up into saying like, you don't like my kids. And, you know, I love my kids and I got to protect it. But it was like any little thing to fight, we would fight over. It was exhausting. But looking back, and we both knew we had abandonment issues, but I guess we just didn't have the tools on how to deal with it. So I really have a heart for people, you know, who want something, but like you said, they're doing the behavior that's the exact opposite of what they want.
And then, so I'm glad you mentioned tools, because then we have to go into that conversation. What tools do you have to help you navigate conflict, to help you be able to communicate? Sometimes people see communication as conflict, so they try to avoid communicating with people. But when you look at the tools, a lot of people don't have good tools. If you have parents or people who took care of you or family members who had high anxiety or were commonly or always dysregulated and they didn't handle situations right, but you saw that after the fight, they still came back together and smiled and stuff like that, you're going to think that that's normal.
Right.
That's just a part of the growing pains. But that's not. Yeah. That's not. You cursing out one another or yelling at each other and stuff like that, that's not normal. Yeah. So if you're coming in with these tools thinking that, well, if I curse this person out, they're still going to be there. And then they leave and you're like, well, why did you leave? You know, what happened? Those are not the tools you need to come in. That's not going to help you maintain a relationship. What you probably don't see is that those same people that you heard yelling and cursing each other out were probably staying in that relationship for other reasons, like kids or things like that, assets and stuff like that. And they were probably miserable. Yeah. You probably didn't see that. So when we talk about that, it's like, what tools, especially for people when they come in dating, what tools are you actually coming in with to help you?
And what do you do with that person? Because when you said that, I was like, oh, flashbacks. What do you say to that person who is let's say a hyper communicator? Like they're efficient, they use their words, the big girl words or big boy words, but the other person sees communication as a threat. I have dated people like that where their whole body tenses up when you say, which I don't think anyone should use the phrase, we need to talk, because that always sounds scary. But anytime there's a conversation, it's the same to them as a fight.
Yes.
And so someone like me, conversation is soothing. Conversation means I'm this much closer to being on the same page with you. It means I'm setting appropriate expectations. But what do you say to that person who is like a deer in the headlights when a conversation is happening?
I think that whenever there's a person who is who has a fear of communicating, or they have a possible conflict avoidance that's attached to that, because sometimes it's that if they believe that communication is conflict, sometimes, and these are steps that you can take, but sometimes it is going to fall on that person. You can soften your approach. That's the first thing you can do. You can soften your approach, but you really have to get to know this person. You have to really understand what triggers them and be able to read their body to be able to understand it. If I am bringing a conversation to you and I see you tense up, I'm going to bring in something positive, highlight something, the sandwich method, right? I'm going to bring in something. And sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes I'm just going to bring in something positive to change the trajectory and to change the atmosphere, because I want to do something to help you relax. Maybe I may bring in a joke or something and just lighten up the mood and then try to ease in the conversation again, but I have to be able to read you and identify exactly what it is that you're going through. But if I'm bringing a conversation to you, of course, I do understand where you're coming from. You say we need to talk. You can say, can we talk about such and such that happened this day and stuff like that to help them better prepare for it. If they say they don't want to talk about it, then maybe you can lightly ask, okay, well, is there a reason you don't want to have the conversation about it? It's really much more on your tone, the rhythm of your voice, your pitch, things like that. But the easiest way for people who are conflict avoidant or they are afraid of communicating is to know them, to really truly understand them. Lighten your approach. You can start off with positive compliments and stuff like that, jokes, things like that. But you have to kind of let them lean more into you. You can't continue to pursue them. If you see they start to withdraw, you pull back, wait till another appropriate time. Now, if it gets to the point to where you're not able to get through whatever it is you're trying to communicate about, then you're going to have to bring that to their attention. Like, I've been trying to talk about this, but we haven't been able to get anywhere because I feel as though you're trying to avoid the conversation. But let me know if that's what's really going on. Can we have the conversation today? If not, then you may have to bring in somebody that's more neutral, that they're more comfortable talking to, because sometimes people are just not comfortable talking. And I'll say this because I have some clients who do this, some couples. Some people can't articulate words as good as their partners can. And so they feel intimidated by that. They won't say it. But they'll show it. Like the partner, like I'll ask like sometimes a man or a woman. It was actually a couple I had where the man was an outstanding speaker. His vocabulary range was ridiculous. He would say words sometimes and I was like, hold on. I ain't never heard that word. And I'm like, hold on. Remember his fiance would just be like exhausted. And she's just like, by the time you get to her and say, well, what do you feel? She's like, well, I think he just pretty much said it. And it would intimidate her because she didn't have the words. And then sometimes I have men who don't have the words as well. And they try to figure out, I want to be able to speak. And they'll say it. Well, she articulates her words so good. Well, she speaks so much better than me. So this is probably not going to make any sense. And it's like, well, just because you don't speak like that person doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean that your statement is invalid. You cannot invalidate yourself because you're going to assume that you're going to be invalidated in that conversation. You speak how you know to speak. Your concerns are just as important as their concerns. Just because they speak better does not mean anything. But you'll see that happens as well. And some people will not go into conversation because they're going to feel intimidated by the way that person speaks.
I just keep hearing fear.
It's always
fear. It's the root of everything. You know, I'm not going to go super biblical, but it's the opposite of love. And I just feel like the more you can infuse love into that situation and reassurance, even the story example I gave about saying, we're not going to break up every time we have a fight. It really did a lot to instill a sense of security and safety. And I think that if people can see the fear behind the anger, I saw some episode on one of the shows that I watch, and she was saying how a lot of times people deal with the surface emotion as opposed to the deep rooted emotion. And so typically it's like anger, rage, frustration, whatever. But the reality is the fear. I'm afraid you're going to leave me, or I'm afraid I'm not good enough, or I'm afraid whatever the case may be. And I think if people were able to empathize enough to realize, oh, this person is struggling with something, and then get to the root of it, then we could stop fighting about this thing over here because it wasn't the door being closed. It was actually about this.
Exactly.
You know,
I think, and on top of that, addressing fear is always going to be appropriate because the only way you can really get past the fear is to take the risk. And a lot of people don't do that. We operate sometimes in our fear, in our comfort zone. Fear is the smallest zone you want to operate in. It's like the last zone to operate in before you reach comfort and before you reach learning and growth and stuff like that. When people operate in fear zones, they won't take risks. They won't take opportunities. They don't trust anything externally. They trust the bubble that they're in and they try to play it safe. But also there's certain fears that you have to break down for people. Like when I hear people say they have a fear of abandonment, and you listen to, you know, situations where they said this person abandoned me. They didn't abandon you. They didn't leave you deserted. They told you they were going to leave. So you were prepared. They prepared you for them leaving. They told you were not happy. Now, if you were ghosted or something like that and you had a bond, I completely understand that. But if it's someone who said, well, I told you I wasn't happy anymore. I didn't want to be with you. I gave it time for you to work things out. They didn't abandon you. You two agreed upon this, or they gave you something to work on a plan. to utilize. That's not abandonment. Now, in regards to like if you had a father or a mother or something that left you and they didn't tell you, that's abandonment.
Right.
But sometimes what you're doing is assigning what you felt in that situation, and you're assigning the trauma to this person, and you're trying to make it look right so you can rationalize why this person left you. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really have to break things down for people. Like, were you really abandoned?
Right.
Did they really reject you? Is that really what you experienced? No. You're projecting this on somebody else, and you are assuming that's what's about to happen. And the only way that you can rationalize it is by saying, this is a fear that I have.
If you have those, authority figures or whatever the term is, because something's not always apparent per se. But what I've seen that can be very destructive is if a person doesn't physically leave, but weaponizes the intimacy. So let's say just as girlfriends, if I'm normally commenting on your posts and calling you up and going to lunch, suddenly I give you the cold shoulder and ice you out, that can be a painful thing. And if you notice, oh, it's always when I've critiqued her. Okay, I critiqued Kittie and now all of a sudden she moves this way. It teaches you subconsciously, don't critique, and I think that's something that I had to really look at with myself, with certain things that would trigger the anxiety. If I felt like there was certain patterns that I had seen previously, I would assume that person's going to do that thing, shutting down, not answering your phone suddenly, all those things. There's just so many anxieties and fears that people experience. And so it might not be something massive, but if they get even a glimpse of it, they're ready to run for the hills.
And I'm glad that you said that, because at one point I used to be that person, right? If I realized that maybe something that I said made you anxious, or things that I would say or criticisms or anything like that would make you possibly not want to be around me or start avoiding me and stuff like that, I would internalize it. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. If I'm criticizing you on something that you've done, and I'm not saying it in a hurtful way,
right?
I'm considering how you're going to feel about it. I'm still considering that. I'm empathizing with the situation. But if I know that I am communicating this to you in a respectful manner, and I'm really just trying to be a friend to help you, and you get upset about that, and you continue to get upset, and you give me the cold shoulder and all that, baby, I'm gonna let you have fun with that cold shoulder. I promise you, I'm gonna let you have fun with it. I am, because to get to a place of security within yourself, you're at peace with a lot of decisions. And I find a lot of peace in decisions that I make. I will send you off for love if I have to.
Right.
That's just something. If you have to send me off for love, I completely understand that. But I'm not responsible for how you feel in situations where you probably should not feel that way. If you have a sensitivity that makes you react impulsively, I'm not responsible for that, because I'm going to think it through, and I'm also going to communicate it. If it's something that I find offensive, I'm going to tell you that I found that offensive.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, I'm going to communicate that with you. And if I see that you say, hey, good riddance after that, I mean, it is what it is.
I am an extremely empathetic person, to the point where I'll physically feel reactions. If I, they say secondhand embarrassment, I will actually get flushed. I will start to feel things for other people, even if it's on TV. And it can be a positive and a negative. And when I was younger, I would immediately take on that feeling. Like you said, if I gave someone feedback and they had a reaction, I would immediately go, oh, I messed up. But it takes so much work to be able to stop and think it through, especially if you've done the work to, like you said, not act impulsively and think first before you speak. There is such a piece to know I did the right thing. I wasn't in the wrong, not from an arrogant standpoint, but I genuinely thought this through, and you realize that this is the person's struggle. There was such a piece for me when I got to the point where I was okay with certain people exiting my life. Because my thought is, if I have to walk on eggshells all the time, if I can't be myself, if I'm not being treated fairly, sometimes, like you say, you just have to let somebody move along and not take it personally. And it's such, I'm loving my 40s, because it's,
well,
I'm such a different space.
I think, and of course, when you be in your 40s, I know that that's a different element, but I think you also found a lot of security in yourself as well. I think 100%. You found a lot of peace in your decisions, a lot of peace in your life that's allowed you to think the way that you do. But unfortunately, certain people don't have that mindset, and they haven't gotten to that place as well. You have it's almost like a luxury for us. It could be a good and a bad, but you working with people gives you access to other people don't have. So you can see people in more intimate connections or more intimate settings, you really get to see them being vulnerable. You get to see them in their rawness. And so sometimes with seeing that, it helps you grow, because when you can help people do introspection work, you can do the same thing. You can reflect. But not everybody has that, right? Not everybody has that. So in the spaces that we see, which, like, in the comment section, I'm sure you've been in comment sections and you look and stuff and you realize, sometimes you have to realize that they're just not there yet. There's it is countless people.
I love to say that I'm sure that's your truth.
It is countless people.
That is your reality, I'm sure.
Especially women. It's countless women, because for the longest, I had so many women that were upset at me. They just thought that you're all about me. And I'm like, no, if you watch me, I'm very neutral.
Oh, I love when people say that to me. I'm like, you haven't been on my post for very long.
I'm like, I'm very neutral, but it's so many women who did come to me. And after, all the negative things they would say on a post about me in the comments, she just to pick me and she don't know what she talk about. Now everyone's this
and you got picked.
I was gonna get picked regardless.
I'm just messing.
I've always been wanting to get picked. So
I'm like, isn't that a goal? How is it an insult? Like, we all want to be picked.
Yeah, but when they say, it's so many of them who came back and apologized. I have so many DMs where they came back. They was like, you know what? I should have listened to you.
Or I realized I was projecting onto you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's okay. You were just in that space. I'm glad that you're not in that space. Unfortunately, you were one of those people, like everybody else, that probably pushed the narrative on vulnerable minds, on naive minds as well. And they followed your projections and you led them in the wrong way. That's why I don't like to project. I don't even like to put my personal business online for that reason.
Right.
I know that I have people who have young minds. I know people who are very naive. I know it's just people who don't have a strong sense of self. And they're going to look at me and probably take certain bits of me that they feel will get them what they need in their life. It's like, I have to be mindful of that. Yeah. I definitely have to be mindful of that.
It's a big responsibility having a platform. Extremely. I try to give a lot of disclaimers where I say, you can follow me on my journey as I'm learning things. And I think it's important to also be able to say, I see things differently now.
Right.
And be able to pivot, because I would hope, if it's been 8 years, I would hope that a decade in, I have a slightly different perspective, a more rounded perspective, not be so black and white. That's one of the biggest things for me. I've started to step into the gray. Everything was very black and white. It was either this or that, and you can't convince me otherwise. And now I'm like, oh, there's nuance. There's exceptions. There are outliers. There are, context is needed. And it's so necessary.
Well, I always tell people who have a polarized way of thinking like that, black or white are the extremes. But I always tell people, if there's no gray area, there's no grace. Your gray area is your grace area. So when you're not a polarized thinker, you come out of that way, that distortion, and you start seeing that it doesn't have to be this extreme. It doesn't have to be this severe or this strict.
Right.
I can give some grace, because if you don't give grace, you won't be able to compromise. You won't be able to be flexible if you are a polarized thinker. It's really good that you came out of that. I'm always hoping that other people come out of that as well.
It's a place to be.
Yes, it is. It is.
And it allows me to see people for their humanness. And it took me having a couple just personal falls from grace. Thankfully, I wasn't in a public space or even something that someone else might not have thought was a big deal. But it took me coming to grips with how flawed I was as a person, getting past the defensiveness, because I had this perfectionist mindset that I wanted to be perfect. That was the other part. So if you're pointing out the stain, you're now saying I'm not perfect, and you're messing with my image, my self-image of myself. My image of myself. And so I had to go through multiple steps. It was acknowledging I'm not perfect and being okay with not being perfect, but also having the maturity to address the things that were in my control. It's kind of like the alcoholics statement, it's a serenity prayer. So, okay, I'm working on these things. I'm acknowledging it. And then there's this piece. And also, you don't get as defensive when someone points it out, because let's just say you're a terrible listener. Someone says you're a terrible listener. You can go, you're right, I am. And I'm working on that. It doesn't, it's not the sting or the shock or this, yes, you're right.
Because it's not, just because someone highlights something you need to work on doesn't mean they're talking about you as a whole.
Right. That you should be thrown away.
Right. They're just talking about one thing that you can improve. Doesn't mean that this is who you are in totality. It's just one thing you can improve.
And they're giving you the cheat code. That's the other part. Like, it was a game changer when I flipped that mindset, or God flipped out, however I got to this mindset. But it was like, if you're sitting here telling me that I smell, you have a vested interest in me changing because you want to continue to be around me.
Yes.
If you didn't care, you'd be like, oh, she smelled, and just let me go on.
Just let you go on.
But the fact that you want me to address it means you want to be around me enough and you want to be comfortable.
That's dope.
You know what I'm
said that. I like that.
But I could only focus on, oh my God, I can't believe she thinks this, da 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 da. But then you have to go, maybe I do smell. Is she a psychotic person that just gets off? Because there are some people who just like to make you feel bad and they'll just make stuff up.
Yes.
But it's like, if I'm looking at her and assessing her and this is out of her character, you know, what I'm assuming you're doing, that's out of her character. I don't know her to be this way. Maybe I just need to take a look at what she's saying.
Yeah, because people need to understand that when you become defensive, it's so hard for a person to get in.
Oh my God. They don't ever want to bring it up again.
Yeah. Yes.
They're like, oh, noted. Okay.
Yes.
We just have to, and now we all just, whenever you come around, we all just.
Yes. And you know what? That was a struggle for me. I still have some of those moments sometimes. Defensiveness, or when people are dismissive, it irks my soul.
Oh, the dismiss, I can't.
And when I feel it, it's like, I don't even want to have a conversation anymore. I don't want to talk about it. I'm never going to bring it back up. Don't worry about it. And sometimes I have to have that conversation with myself, like, Kittie, just talk about it. But then it's like, do I feel like going back and forth with this person today?
Yes. Or the tit for tat.
Yes.
You know, Yansy, you a little musty today. Well, you know what? You need a lint roller.
The scanning. Like, let me see what I'm about to say about you.
Like this. Okay, I do need a lint roller. You're right. But we're going to table that for now because I brought this to the table first. Like all these little tactics, I'm like, no. We're not going to jump through hoops. We'll get to my linty shirt in a minute, but we're going to address the
scanning was too fun. See what I got on you.
I know you got.
See, I play too much. Somebody do that. I'll be like, are you looking for something to talk about right now?
Let me show you the track that's showing. Let me
Oh my God. See, that's why I'm so glad I'm not in those kind of spaces because I will piss people off.
Yeah. I have to be careful to not, because I've been accused of sounding like one guy who just was getting to know me. He goes, I feel like I'm in a therapy session. Because I don't do the, when I was dating, I don't do the, what are your favorite colors? Like, I couldn't. So we'd end up having deep conversations in the first conversation. But sometimes I have to be careful because not everybody loves communication. Yeah. That is my love. If there was a love language of communication, that would be mine. Yeah. And I realize, mine is quality time, but it's quality time while having deep conversations. I like to feel like I walked away having a deeper understanding of you. Right. That makes me feel bonded. And not everybody is in that space, and not everybody has overcome a lot of those insecurities. And so they're going to look at certain things like, I'm getting in trouble. She's having a conversation, I'm in trouble. Or if there's a criticism, she's ready to throw me away. No, I like you a lot. And it's just one thing that's just a little pebble in my shoe.
I've had to talk to a number of people over the past couple of months. And it's one person in particular that I've had to have a conversation with. And I had to tell that person that it's not the fact that people don't want to talk to you. It's not the fact that they don't want to communicate. It's that they can't, because the moment that they express something that you've done to offend them,
not a safe space.
It's not safe because you get to yelling. And just like you said, you get to picking at certain things that they did wrong, or you say hurtful things to help console or to soothe whatever it is that's going on with you internally. And sometimes it's just that power that people want in conversations. They don't want to feel powerless. And so they go below the belt to help them avoid feeling powerless, right? And it's like, that's your ego, your pride, and that need for control that you have. And it's getting in the way of you being able to communicate with people. You want people to stay connected with you, yet you don't communicate. And communicate is what drives connection. If you want a person to stay connected with you, you have to be willing to listen to them. But if you don't want to hear about yourself, you're showing a person they can't trust you. I can't trust to know that you're not going to blow up. You're not going to curse me out or call me out my name or belittle me. I don't want to be around you.
Or the psychoanalysis. Yeah. You're only telling me I'm musty because you're jealous of my platform. Like, how did we connect these two dots? Like, these people were making claims that you can't even substantiate. It's like, how do I even come back? I can't quantify if you're like, what?
Because I'm like, you made that up in your head.
You just, okay.
That's a different way of thinking.
And a lot of times I feel like it's an insight into their mind.
Yes.
Because I'm like, if you went from you gave me those brownies because you're trying to flex. I'm like, you must be the type of person who does gifts to flex.
Yeah, it's really you're showing your insecurities right there.
Yeah.
You are showing if I heard somebody make that statement, my Lord, that is the funniest thing. Because do you want me to be jealous of you? Yeah, I'm jealous of you. So I'm telling you that you have a slight odor. Yeah, I'm jealous.
Right.
I want your platform. I'm copying everything. Really?
All of a sudden we chasing Kittie and
okay. Like what? I'm never going to understand that. Oh my God, that is too funny.
When you find your circle though that can have conversations, I have just a few girlfriends. I'm very, very tight in my circles. And that's just one of the prerequisites. Someone who can say what it is. I don't want yes people in my corner. Like when I need you, I'm gonna tell you, girl, I need you lips in the ear.
Yes.
But I need you to get me together after I'm done crying.
And like, that's, you know what? Oh my Lord, I wish I could find a lot of people that's like that. I think that's another reason, like once again, I don't have a desire to establish those connections. And I say that often. It's just like, it's just not there. And some people try to tell me, no, Kittie, no, baby, it's just not there. Because if I'm able to communicate with you, then we're good. But if you're not able to communicate with me, we cannot have a conversation. Right. If you can tell me about myself, but I can't tell you about yourself, you cannot be around me. I'm not going to do that.
Can you imagine how on point people would be? Because that verse, iron sharpens iron. If people actually listen to their circle, because most people will tell you about yourself and get you together. Everyone, oh yeah, that's just how Yansy it. People know if we could get past the ego, we should all be at much higher levels of ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited to be in a relationship, because I said, there are going to be so many blind spots that I have, just human nature. My partner is going to get me all the way together. And my only prerequisite was that he has to be kind. Because you can either tell me I'm musty and clown me, or you could be like, babe, I think, there's ways to do it where the person can still have their self-esteem intact.
And so it's still...
People don't think I'm really musty me either.
I can vouch that she's not. No, but so if we take it back to dating, right? Take it back to dating and relationships. Your dating experiences will be a lot more pleasurable if you fix your mindset and you address the things that you need to address. Those insecurities, those anxieties, those sensitivities that you have, those fears need to be addressed before you even attempt. And sometimes I'll say this, I'm not gonna say before you attempt, because you can date somebody, you can get into a relationship with somebody, and they can bring out certain things
I was just gonna say
that you did not see.
Yeah. They said it's like caulking something. You could think it's waterproof, but until you put the water in, you don't know where it's leaking.
But you have to be willing to hear it.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to hear it.
I say start with your circle first. That's the first thing I do when I coach people.
If you can trust your circle.
If you could trust your circle. I say if there are people who are trustworthy, ask enough people, and when you start to see a common denominator, ding, 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 that might be your
that kind of makes sense. That's probably why people come to me. Because I don't be in a circle. It's like, what you coming to me for? Kittie, what would you do in this situation? No, what did you do?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first, and then we'll get to the rest. But yeah, if you have a circle you can trust in, then that's good. Some people have circles that just validate and dilute the reality. Yes. And it's like, okay, so you want somebody to tell you what you want to hear.
Yes. That's a good point, though. A lot of people do hand select their yes man tribe, so that might.
Because I'm going to be honest with you, I wish that in my past, when I look at my past now, I wish a lot more people held me accountable. I wish a lot more people. I'm like, why didn't y'all hold me accountable? I wish y'all, and it wasn't their responsibility. It was mine. A lot of
people doing that
but sometimes when you're in certain things, you can't see your wrongs. And I just wish it was people that was like, yo, Kittie, you tripping.
I like that you said that, though, because my biggest pain came from people holding me accountable. But unfortunately, it was not done, in my opinion, in a loving way. So I got the truth not in love from some key, people in my life. But it was one of those things where it caused so much distress. It was a wake-up call. It was like having water thrown in my face. So we're on the two opposite ends of the spectrum. We ended up getting where we needed to get, but you were saying probably you could have got there faster. I do think it sped up my process because I couldn't deal. And so I think it's important for people as much as possible to speak up. And even if it costs you the relationship, that might be that person's wake-up call, and they don't realize till 20 years later, Kittie was telling me that.
And so I do have a question, because there's a video that's floating around, and I don't know how to scale this. What's your take on I'm going to say women because the video was focused on women.
Okay.
Women dating multiple men.
Oh, I have and I'm interested because I don't know your take. I think
Don't
I'm
think
different.
about mine.
I know. I was like, oh, this will be interesting because I'm different than most coaches. I'll say most coaches I hear tell women to date as many people as possible, and I agree with it in concept. The principle behind it is not getting attached, having an abundance mindset. You can move on. But when I actually started to practice these things, because that was my whole experience. As I was dating, I'm learning. I realized that you can't stop feelings. And so I give this example. Okay, so we might be on the same page.
And we're gonna be.
So I'm going to use Bob as the example. I'm talking to 5 people, but Bob and I catch a vibe. And I ask people, when Bob calls, are you clicking over from the other guy? And you're on the phone with John. Are you clicking over when Bob calls? If Bob hasn't asked you out for the weekend, are you kind of stalling on giving your answer? There's always a front runner. So in my mind, you already became exclusive with this person emotionally. And now it's jacked up to John because John is going 100%. You're his Bob.
Right.
You're his number one pick. And so he's trying to figure out why you're dodging his answer for the week. You know what I'm saying? So I everybody talks about don't put all your eggs in one basket. And my comeback is we are not humans. I mean, we are humans. We're not eggs and there are no baskets.
Yes.
So I just feel like it's an avoidant tactic that I'm afraid I'm going to get too far in. I'm going to feel something and I don't have a safety net. And then this is the ricochet ripple effect. You can tell me my feelings. I'm passionate about this. The ricochet effect is now John, you've created an insecurity in John.
Yes.
Now John is confused because he feels like he doesn't know how to read women.
Yes.
No, you were reading her correctly. She just was doing you a disservice. When I had that wake up call and I realized that I was using the backup roster men as a security blanket.
There we go.
I felt so convicted.
Yep.
I cleaned out my phone that day.
Yes.
And I realized that not only did I need to get rid of the roster of eligible people, which are never not that many eligibles, but I also had my give me a testosterone ego boost.
Yes.
I just want to know I'm cute. I just want, and some of you kind of, when you're bored, you talk to. Girl, when I forced myself to go completely cold turkey, and sit all by myself when there wasn't someone I was seriously talking to, man, my growth during that season.
Yes.
Because so many people, and especially, and that's not even with sex, that was just me having a ego boost and a fix of a conversation or a text.
Yes.
Imagine if we took away meaningless sex, meaningless dates, using men for dinners, and we only interacted when we liked someone and immediately cut them off when we
Get
realized
the
we didn't
offering
like them.
plate now. Bring the offering plate. We just need to put your Cash App, your PayPal, or something just right.
Send it on
below
all
you because my God.
Because it's all the Johns, it's all the runner-ups, and then those are the guys who are on my posts who are bashing women, and we go, no, you've just been dealing with women who don't like you. Because the woman who likes you, she's not leaving you unread. She's not taking 2 weeks to answer. We have to slow ourselves down from answering too quick. We see the bubbles still going, and we're like, okay.
Yansy.
That's how I feel about that.
I don't have nothing to add to that.
That's why we friends, girl. That's why we friends.
I usually have something to add.
I'm so happy we're on the same page because I thought you were going to go like philosophical and be like, no, you need to take all of your eggs, grill some of them, scramble some of them, fry some of them. No.
I usually have something else. I'm like,
leave them other people alone. I was so blunt, girl, when I was dating. I was so blunt with people because I feel like that is the biggest gift you can give someone. Not rudeness, but bluntness. And I had my exit statement. I don't feel the amount of chemistry I need to feel in order to sustain a relationship, a romantic relationship. And I would let them go on their merry way. Even if they argued and try to, negotiate, I would let it go.
Yeah.
Because I want to have space for that other person. And I don't want to teach you to keep getting hurt and keep having these cycles because I'm not going to give you the energy that you should. And I don't want you to think that's a normal thing. And I say it skews the data. So you ladies doing it to men doing it to, you're skewing the data. And now these people who don't have a lot of experience go, this is how men operate. No, this is how selfish men operate. This is how selfish women operate. And if you don't know the signs of a person who's committed and not committed to you, you're going to keep having your time wasted. Now you keep getting bitter. And it's this vicious cycle. That's why my thing is understand men so that you can vet men and then attract your person. If he's not moving the way he needs to move around, sis.
This is why y'all need to have Yansy as your dating coach. This is the reason why. And I don't say that too often.
Well, thank you, girl.
Y'all scratch that, okay? I don't say that too often, but no. I feel like a lot of women can benefit from that, from hearing that.
We waste our own time.
Yeah, but just one more, just to add one piece that you said, because as far as like, you can't stop emotions, you can't hide emotions, but you also have to assess your emotional capacity. If you have a long laundry list of emotional needs that take up the capacity and you're trying to date 5 or 6, 7 different people, how do you think that's going to work?
That part. I can't even remember the information.
How do you think that's going to work?
Yeah.
My needs are already taking up a lot of this capacity, and now I have to bring in your needs on top of 4 other people that I have to do that with, on top of possible responsibilities that I have, obligations that I have, family obligations, financial constraints, things like that are already taking up me emotionally and mentally. And then I have to balance out how much time and energy and conversation I invest in other people. Somebody's going to feel neglected.
And you know what else? This is a real time, like, let's get real nitty gritty. When you're bonding with someone and you have 2 people dating with intention, it's not about a person being insecure and needing to know everything about your day. You gladly share it.
Yes.
So if I'm talking to you and I've set the precedent that, girl, as soon as I get off work, I'm on the phone with you. I'm on the ride home with you. And then all of a sudden I go missing for 2 hours. I'm not responding to your text. That's just weird. It's going to stick out like a huge beacon. And then if you be like, oh, casually, oh, what were you up to? Well, I can't be like, oh, I was talking to some dude. You're not, that would be rude, right? But it's a gray area. We're not in a committed relationship. So you have no right to tell me who I can and can't talk to. However, if you find out I'm talking to other people, as a dude, you're going to go, I'm barking up the wrong tree.
Yes.
Because clearly I'm not doing something right if she's still entertaining Tom, Dick, and Harry.
And we know men are competitive. So,
hello, somebody.
It's like, hold on now.
So it's like, and then you unintentionally as the woman are giving mixed signals to the guy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So then he backs off, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're like, I knew he was just wasting my time. Girl, if you didn't just deal with seeing it through. And then this is the comeback too. Yeah, but you waste so much time. What do you mean wait? Like, it's not linear anyway.
Yes.
It's not like you can, okay, it didn't work out with him. Boom, instantly this next guy, we just pick up where he left off. Like, it's just weird. And I've done this before. When I had multiple people, which didn't happen often, but usually it was on dating apps. And someone finally gets around to responding to me, or I had just swiped or whatever. But now a day has gone by and immediately a connection is building.
Yes.
Once I can tell I'm starting to feel something, I will go back literally to the inboxes and be like, I know we haven't had a chance to get to know each other well. I've connected with someone. If it's okay, may I circle back if it doesn't work out? And I would get the most kind answer. That is the most mature thing I've ever heard. Oh, that's cool. And it also tells them how you move with men.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, it's just a timing thing. I met him on Wednesday, didn't talk to you till Thursday. And there were some people I did circle back. It wasn't a fit, but if you're still open, and their egos can get bruised sometimes because they think it's a competition, but it's like, I literally did not meet you until after I'd already connected. But I just think there's such a more mature way of dating that respects people's feelings. But there's so much selfishness. It's me, and I'm going to use you to make myself comfortable instead of realizing you're a whole human.
Yansy, I clutch my pearls. Jesus have mercy.
Got a little warm. I got a little passion in there.
That was beautiful passion.
Oh, thank you.
That was.
I really care. Girl, I'm telling you.
I can tell.
I said, if the Lord allows me to have the tools and the team, because there's so much stuff I want to do, I really empathize. I empathize with women, and they want it so badly. And they always say, why are you talking about the women? Why are you telling the men? I said, the men are not pounding down my door saying, I want a partner so badly.
Yeah.
The women are.
Yeah.
They're 40, 50 with their cats. No shade to the cats. But they want a partner desperately, and they don't know how to do it. And a lot of times they are their own worst enemy when you start talking to them.
They are.
Let me help you. What does it help me help you?
I'm sorry. I'm taking in this conversation because sometimes when I talk to people, I'm like, but this was a conversation that was great. I love to be able to help people, if you can't tell that. I love to be able to help people. And I can tell you do as well.
Yes.
And that's a great thing. That is especially in our professions, there are so many people who are in these spaces that are projecting their own traumas on the people because they have degrees and certifications and stuff like that. So to know that this is a gift of yours, this is not something that you're just doing for the fun of it or just for money. This is a gift. Yeah, this is actually a gift that you have. And it's beautiful. Even the way that you articulate things, you simplify things, and people need that.
I appreciate that.
So that's a really beautiful thing.
I appreciate that. I want more love in the world. It truly makes me happy to see healthy relationships. Exactly. I know it doesn't make for good TV, but it's just so heartwarming when you see people work through an issue or you see, love restored. We need more of that. We have enough toxic stuff to look at.
We do. Well, I appreciate your time today, Yansy.
Well, thanks for having me.
I really do.
Now that I remember we're neighbors.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Talk to Me, Kitty. I will see you all on the next one. Bye, babies.